Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jonathan Murray, and I'm with the GRE program, and I work in client relations. And I do a lot of student outreach, discussing the GRE and a lot of information about the test, about preparing for the test, going over the test, nuts and boltsy type stuff. But so we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff today. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank College Week Live for the opportunity to present today, present this information to you. So before we get started, let's just take a quick look at what we're going to cover today. First of all, I'm just going to go over what you need to know about the GRE, just kind of an overview of the test, the different sections, the question types, things like that. Then we'll talk a little bit about registering for the test. It's always an important topic, and I get a lot of questions about that when I do student events. We'll also talk about what to expect on test day when you're at the testing center. Getting and sending your scores to universities, tools that we have to help you prepare, which include an array of test preparation tools and options, and then a few last things just to give you some ideas to help make your application even stronger. So if you do have questions throughout the session, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A button. It should be on your left-hand side of your screen. And I will do my best to answer all of the questions. And I'm going to save all the questions till the end just so we can get through the content first, but then we'll have the Q&A session at the conclusion of the session. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started. So first of all, I just want to let you know that the GRE Revised General Test is the most widely accepted test out there for graduate level admissions. It's accepted by thousands of master's programs. A number of MBA programs now accept GRE scores, so if you're thinking about pursuing a business degree, you can definitely take the GRE in most cases to pursue an MBA. There's about 1,200 business schools worldwide that now accept the GRE scores for admission to their MBA programs. And that includes the majority of the top schools ranked by U.S. News World Report, Financial Times, as well as Business Week. So definitely think about taking the GRE if you're kind of on the fence about business school, because GRE is the one test that allows you to pursue multiple options. So take that one test, you can go for a degree in business, you can go for a degree in engineering. So it allows you to take one test to pursue multiple options rather than having to take multiple tests if you wanted to pursue business school. So in addition to that, we also, GRE scores are also accepted for doctoral programs as well as fellowships, and scores are good for 5 years. So we always recommend to students if it's a good idea to take the test early, which means take it when you're right as you're graduating, maybe a year after. So you're in that education mindset or that testing or school mindset. We recommend taking it then. If you want to test a job market, you can do that, or and then apply to school later, and those scores will be good if you decide to do that, since they're good for 5 years. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, in other words. So here's just kind of summary of the GRE in a sense. Getting where you want to go is pretty much what I just spoke about. The flexibility gives you options to go to many different programs that are out there. And back in August of 2011, we introduced a new version of the GRE. It's called the GRE Revised General Test. I'm not going to talk about the old version because that's not relevant to you at all at this point. But with the new version of the GRE, you're actually able to navigate back and forth within sections, there's a calculator, things like that. So it really creates a more natural feel for you, and there's a lot of new test taker friendly features, which we'll talk about. And the last big change to the test is the fact that we have introduced a new score select option. So the score select option, in a nutshell, allows you to send whatever scores you want to a school. So we'll go over these 3 main points throughout the presentation. So here is a look at, excuse me one second, sorry. Here's a look at what the GRE actually entails. So when you come in to take the test, you're going to be given the analytical writing section first. So you're going to be given an issue task as well as an argument task. So that section will always be first. Now, following the completion of that section, you will get 2 verbal reasoning sections as well as 2 quantitative reasoning sections. So that can be in no particular order, so it's completely random. And as you can see here, there are 20 questions per section in the verbal, as well as 20 questions excuse me, in the quantitative section, and you can see the timing allowed for the task. So now, in addition to those sections, there is also going to be either one unscored section or a research section within your test. So the unscored section is likely going to be an additional verbal reasoning section or an additional quantitative reasoning section. Now, as I mentioned, again, this is an unscored section, and you're not going to know when it comes, so it's very important that you do as best as you possibly can on all the sections. And the reason this is in there, this is because it allows us to pre-test items and questions that we can use on future administration. So it's very important from a research perspective and keeping the flow of questions going into the GRE program. In addition to that, we have a research section. I'm sorry, either or. So if you don't get the unscored section, there will be a research section at the end. This will be identified. It is optional. We do recommend that you do it. We hope that you do it, but we understand if you don't want to. But this allows us to test out actual new question types for future tests and administrations. So the approximate testing time for the full test is about 3 hours and 45 minutes, and that doesn't include the time breaks. So we'll talk about the breaks in a minute. So now let's first take a closer look at the analytical writing section. Now, the analytical writing section is going to be assessing your critical thinking and your analytical writing skills. And as I mentioned, you're going to be given 2 tasks. You're first going to have an analyze an issue task, as well as analyze an argument task. So basically, you're going to be given an issue, and you're going to have to give your position on it. And then you're also going to have to, or basically, you create an argument for that issue. And then you're actually going to get the second task, which is an argument task. So you're going to have to analyze that argument and basically deconstruct somebody else's argument. Both essay responses are going to be done on the computer, so you'll have your keyboard and the standard functionalities available to you throughout the section. Now let's take a closer look at the verbal reasoning section. So the verbal reasoning section contains a reading comprehension section, as well as text completion type questions, as well as sentence equivalence questions. Now, for those of you who may be familiar with the previous version of the GRE, we did get rid of the antonyms and analogies section. Now, vocabulary is still going to be important within the verbal reasoning section. However, it's going to be measured within context. So, as I said, no more antonyms and analogies, but vocabulary will be done within context. So, for example, within reading comprehension passages, or within text completion type questions, or even the sentence equivalence questions. So reading comprehension, pretty straightforward. You're going to get text, you're going to have to analyze and read and answer questions based on that text. Some of the questions will require you to choose more than one answer to fully answer the question. We may also give you a select in passage type question, which means you're basically going to highlight a sentence or a couple sentences to answer the question that's being asked of you. Now, text completion, a little bit different. In a sense, you're going to be given a paragraph with certain words omitted from it, and you're going to have to choose the words to best complete that particular paragraph. And this is where vocabulary comes in. It's most likely going to be vocabulary, but there could be short phrases that could be used to complete the blanks. Now, important thing to note with the text completion section is, let's say, for example, there's 3 blanks for a particular question. So you have to get each one of those correct in order to get full credit for the answer. So if you just get 2 of the 3 correct, then you wouldn't get the question correct. So keep that in mind. You need to get all 3 blanks correct, whether there's 1 blank, 2 blanks, 3 blanks, or 4 blanks. So now let's take a closer look at the quantitative section. The quantitative section, one of the major changes to this section is the fact that we are including an on-screen calculator, which every time I tell students, they get very excited about that, and I think it's a great introduction to the test. It's going to be an on-screen calculator, standard function, so it's going to be addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division capabilities, and square root capabilities as well. So that'll be available just during the quantitative section, and we really introduce this because we know that students are using calculators in the classroom, so we want it to reflect what's being done in the classroom. And we also, we don't want you to get burdened with, crunching numbers on scratch paper, things like that. I mean, let's face it, in the real world, you're using calculators, so we want to make sure that we reflect that, and you can focus more on your reasoning skills rather than crunching numbers. So we have a few different question types here. We have quantitative comparison, we have numeric entry type questions, we have an increased number of data interpretation questions, So what that means is you're going to get a data interpretation set, and you're going to have to answer a series of questions based on that data that's presented to you. And also in the quantitative section, you may have questions where you're asked to provide more than one answer to fully answer the question, things like that. Now, in terms of the level of the math that's in the quantitative section, it's going to focus on basic mathematical skills and elementary mathematical concepts, areas such as arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. You're not going to get any advanced topics like calculus, trigonometry, things like that. So you may have heard me mention that on the new GRE, there are going to be 2 sections in the verbal reasoning measure and 2 sections in the quantitative reasoning measure. So the previous GRE question, you had to answer the questions one at a time. So basically what that means is you get one question, and however you performed on that question, the next question that you get would be either more difficult or less difficult. So with the new GRE, we're doing this at a section level. So with the verbal reasoning measure, you're going to get your first verbal reasoning measure, and based on your performance in that verbal reasoning measure, your second verbal reasoning measure is either going to be more difficult or less difficult. And the same applies for the quantitative reasoning section. And this is what we call section level adaptive. So it's important to note that both sections are obviously, as I'm sure you assume, both sections are very important in calculating your final score. So make sure you do your best on all of the questions. And also, I want to point out that, you know, a lot of people don't know this about the GRE, but you don't lose points for getting questions wrong. So this test is right scored. So what that means is you're only giving credit for questions that you get correct. So what that means is it's better to guess too. So if you're in a situation where you're just not sure of the answer, give your best guess, because you at least have a shot of getting the question correct. So that was an overview of the test and the structure of it. Now let's talk a little bit about registration, as this is always a hot topic with students that I speak to. So first and foremost, we have a very extensive test center network throughout the world. We have over 850 testing locations throughout the world, so chances are wherever you may be, there is a GRE testing center nearby. You can take a look at our listing of testing centers and locations at takethegre.com, and you can choose Register Now to go in and take a look at where the test is offered. This will give you the options also to check seat availability and things like that. So I always mention to students that it's very important to register as early as you possibly can. This is important because it helps ensure that you're going to get your preferred location, date, and time. This is important because a lot of times GRE seats will fill up, so you really want to make sure you think about when you want to test, to make sure you get your preferred location and time, and things like that. So what I always say is to students is really create a preparation plan. First of all, figure out when your admissions deadlines are. That's the most critical piece of this. So figure out when your admission deadlines are, the programs that you're applying, and kind of backtrack from there. So give yourself a couple months to prepare for the test. We actually did a survey on GRE test takers, and test takers said they prepare anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Most students take that much time to prepare for the test. So think about that. It's obviously going to vary based on who you are and your study habits, things like that, and how comfortable you feel. But try to give yourself, at least in the initial stage, a buffer of about 1 to 3 months to prepare for the test, then take the test. Then I'd give yourself a couple months before the admission deadline too, just so if you want to take it again, you can, and we'll get into that later. But it also ensure that you meet admissions deadlines, because that's critical here. We want to make sure that you meet those admissions deadlines. Another important tip to recommend during registration is your identification. There are different identification requirements for each country, so make sure you take a look at that. You can find that in our registration booklet that's online. This is critical because our test center network and our administration staff at the test centers take this extremely seriously, and if you don't have the correct ID, you could be, most likely will be turned away from testing. So make sure you check into this beforehand and bring the proper identification to the center. Another important point is make sure whatever name you use to register for the test matches exactly what is on your identification. This is critical because getting back to the point of the TCAs being very specific with this, there are times where they will turn people away because their name on the registration doesn't match what's on the identification. So this is critical. And here's just a few points to make sure the spelling matches exactly. Make sure you provide your entire first name and also your entire last name or your family name. Now here's an example too. If you have if you have this type of name here, where you have apostrophes in your name, our system doesn't accept the apostrophes, so make sure that you exclude them from the registration document. So you won't be able to put them in anyway. So just make sure that that this is how you enter your name in these types of situations. And this is just showing you how you create a MyGRE account. You can do this from ets.org/mygre. Simply go in and fill out the information, and then this is what basically allows you to get your account started, register for the test, get your score reports, things like that. So once you're in, these are all the options that you'll have available to you. You can register for a test. We have the general test here. We also have the subject test, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Viewing your scores online, where you have options to send your scores to institutions. We have our test prep links within here. So a lot of options for you. A lot of links are connected to your GRE profile page. So what do you expect on test day? Well, always get to the test center early, about 30 minutes early. I remember, this brings me back to when I actually had to take my test. I didn't plan enough ahead of time. I actually was 20 to 30 minutes late for my test. It was a very, very stressful experience. I didn't leave early enough, and I got lost on the way there. So really make sure you plan ahead, plan the routes, and plan to get there about 30 minutes in advance if you want to save yourself a lot of stress. It took me a little while to calm down. So speaking from experience, really, really make sure you plan ahead to make sure you know where you're going and that you get there with a nice buffer to ensure that you're checked in and seated and ready to begin on time. So you heard me mention before that we made a lot of changes to the GRE in terms of the structure of the test and the format. So this is where I want to talk a little bit about the new format, the section-level adaptive model, and the test-taker-friendly features to the test. So what the test-taker-friendly features allow, or what that really means is, it allows you to navigate back and forth within a section, so you can navigate back and forth a verbal reasoning section or a quantitative reasoning section. You can change your answers, you can skip questions, you can flag questions to come back to. So it really allows you to use your own test-taking strategies and allows you a more natural feel or a natural approach to testing. So with that said, so as I mentioned, there are 2 sections for the verbal and 2 sections for the quantitative. So once you're within a verbal section, you can navigate within it freely, but once you decide to leave that particular section, you cannot return to it. So it's important that you that you understand that the navigation only applies within a section. Once you leave it, you cannot go back to it. Now here's just a snapshot of what you'll see on the screen in the testing center. So you have your calculator here. As you can see, there'll be a button up on top, which is right here. So you'll click that, the calculator will appear on the screen. And this is how you navigate with the back and next buttons within the section. You have the help button if you want to access the directions for any reason to the section. You can exit the section if you want to, but we also have something called a review feature. Now what this review feature does, it allows you to see a picture of all of the questions in the particular section. So you can see how many questions that you've answered, how many you haven't answered, how many you flagged to come back to. So it really allows you to gauge your progress throughout the section. Now when you're testing, we do offer you breaks. Don't worry, there are breaks involved in that 3 hours and 45 minutes. We have a 10-minute break after the 3rd section, so that's important to try to time it around them. You can replenish your scratch paper or use the restroom, things like that. But we also do have a 1-minute break between all the other sections. But also, it's good to know that if you do decide to take an unscheduled break, the clock does not stop. So maybe if you finish the section early, you have a couple minutes, then sure, take a break if you want. But really keep in mind that the clock does not stop with an unscheduled break. So just some general tips and strategies. A lot of these may be obvious to you, but we want to just go over them with you just in case. Just make sure you're familiar with the format and the directions of the test beforehand. And we'll talk about our test preparation material, so I'll let you know what you can use to do that. Always be aware of time. Make sure you understand what the question is actually asking by reading each of the questions thoroughly and carefully and reading all those particular answer choices before answering the questions. And throughout the GRE, there is no partial credit. So as I mentioned before in that one example with the text completion questions, make sure that you fully answer the question because there is no partial credit. And one thing I always stress to students, as I mentioned earlier, if for some reason you're stuck and you just don't know the answer, give it a shot, guess, because this test is right scored, and you don't lose credit for getting something wrong, you only get credit for getting things correct. So what I also mention to students is when preparing for the test is really don't waste a ton of time on questions that you're just not sure of. Flag those to come back to and focus on the questions that you can answer with certainty. This helps maximize the number of questions that you're going to answer with confidence, and then go back to those questions that you may not be sure about. So, save those till the end. Always obviously try to answer them, but save them to the end so you can focus on the ones that you feel confident about answering. And no question carries greater weight than any other. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet, but that's a very important point too. So if you're stuck on a question and you find it very difficult, that question is worth just as many points as the next question. So keep that in mind when answering the questions. And when I was talking about that review screen, when you're on that review screen, while it's a great tool, just make sure you don't spend too much time on it, because the clock does not stop running when you're on that review screen. It keeps ticking down and ticking down. So it's taking away critical time that you have to answer questions. Now, from an analytical writing perspective, we do publish all of our prompts on the website. So if you want to take a look at the types of prompts that you may face in the analytical writing section, then definitely take a look on our website. And again, I'll show you where those are available in a minute. So we publish all of those. We publish all of our scoring guides that our raters use to score the test. We'll talk about the scoring process also in a minute. But definitely take a look at those before or when preparing for the analytical writing section, so you know what the raters are looking for in the responses, and you also know what prompts you can expect to see on the test. We also recommend practicing under writing under time conditions. So this just helps you get used to managing your time, budgeting your time, and maybe putting together an outline, things like that, saving X amount of time to write, and then a few minutes at the end of proofreading. Now here's just some specific strategies for the issue task as well as the argument task. So on the issue task, you want to make sure you're supporting your position on the issue with reasons and examples drawn from your own reading, your own experience, your observations, your academic studies. So try to pull your own opinions into it to support yourself there. And always leave a few minutes at the end of the task to make any revisions to the text. So our readers understand, or our raters understand, that this is a rough draft. They get that. They understand it's under time conditions. But they are going to, and they're grading it holistically, and I'll explain what that means shortly. But, and they're not going to take points away for like minor spelling errors, minor grammatical errors, things like that. But if you do have errors in there that are taking away from the overall meaning of the response, then that could reduce your score. So we always recommend saving a minute or two at the end just to proofread to make sure there are no major errors in the text. So now from a verbal reasoning perspective, we always recommend reading the full passages to get an overall sense before answering the question. So give a quick read through it first and then go look at the questions so they're more relevant to what you just read and they make more sense to you. And then you can always go back and read it again if you want to read different parts of it. And always make sure you answer strictly on the basis of the passage. Make sure you don't try to bring in any of your own knowledge into the equation here, because all the questions are based on what is in front of you, what is in the text. So they're not drawing off anything else, they're not making any assumptions. So make sure that you answer based specifically on what is in the text. Now, from a quantitative side, here are just a number of tips and strategies as well. I didn't go through all of them on the verbal. I didn't want to just, go through every single one, but they're there for you to take a look at. I'll leave this up too. But I'll just talk about a few of these here. Now, from the quantitative perspective, just keep in mind that the geometric figures are not drawn to scale, so really avoid estimating the sizes by your own sight and measurement of the figures that are in front of you. You also want to make sure that when it's appropriate, avoid those lengthy calculations by rounding numbers before computing an estimate. You want to look for comparisons and make sure you're recognizing and continuing those numerical patterns and things like that. So make sure you're paying attention to that. You could also, if you want to, you can also draw your own figure, your diagram or figure or make a list to help sort out what the question is actually asking. That's what the scratch paper is there for. So take advantage of that if you need to. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the scoring process. So just to make sure you're all aware, the GRE reports 3 different scores. So you're going to get a score for the analytical writing section on a 0 to 6 point scale in half-point increments. You're also going to get a verbal reasoning score on 130 to 170 in 1-point increments, and you're also going to get a score on the quantitative section in 130 to 170 in 1-point increments. So once you finish taking the test at the testing center, you're going to be given an option to accept your scores or cancel your scores. Now you need to make this decision before you actually see your scores. So you're making this decision solely based on how you felt you performed. So let's just, in this example, let's say you decided to accept your scores, which I'd say the majority of students do choose to do, especially with Score Select. We'll get into that in a minute too. So you accept your scores, then you'll see the unofficial scores on the screen at the testing center for the verbal reasoning measure as well as the quantitative reasoning measure. The analytical writing scores are not there because they are scored by human raters and they're sent back to ETS, so we can't produce them right on the spot like that, whereas the verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning are numeric entry for the most part, and they can be scored by the computer. So if you choose to report your scores, as I said, you'll see those on the screen. And then you can decide to send your scores to up to 4 universities free of charge. So I always tell students to come to the testing center with at least 4 schools or programs in mind that they want to report their scores to. So if anything done outside of the testing center, there is a fee associated with that. You can do up to 4 at the testing. I mean, you can obviously do more than 4 at the testing center, but the first 4 are free of charge. Now, the Score Select option, and we're going to talk about this in just 1 second. The Score Select option, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it gives you the option to choose to send your scores choose to send whichever scores you want to schools. So this is just what what the unofficial scores will look like. You'll see them on your screen there, and then you can decide the schools you want to send to. So the Score Select option. So as I mentioned, the Score Select option gives you, the test taker, the option to choose which set of scores you want to send to a school. So when you're at the testing center on test day, once you decide to accept your scores, you can send your most recent option, your most recent scores, which is obviously the test that you just took. Or if you've taken the test multiple times, you can decide to send all scores from your reportable history from the testing center. So let's say you have 4 schools in mind. Maybe you want to send your most recent to one school. Maybe you want to send your entire reportable history to the other school. You can do that. It gives you that option at the testing center. So after you leave the testing center, you can also send scores as well. Sometimes students decide they want to wait for whatever reason. That's totally fine as well. So after the testing is over, you can go into your My GRE account, and you can choose which scores you want to send to schools. So with that Score Select option, You can choose your most recent scores, which is your most recent test taken. You can choose all of your scores, so that's all scores from all of the administrations, all the tests you took, your entire reportable history to send, or you can choose any of them. So, for example, let's say you took the test 4 times, and you're really only comfortable with one set of scores out of those 4 times. You can choose just one set of scores to send to a school, and the school would never see those other 3. Actually, I'm going to go back to score select for 1 second. Important thing to note here, though, is when I say set of scores, that means based on the administration date. So you can't pick a verbal score from one test administration, a quantitative from another, and an analytical writing score from another. It's got to be from one full intact administration. Now, official scores are usually available in your My GRE account 10 to 15 days from the test date. So you can view them there online. And once they're available officially, they will officially be sent to schools. So just keep in mind that some schools will get scores electronically. Those schools will get the scores faster. But there are a number of schools out there that do still get scores in the mail. So that may take a little bit more time. So I'd allow around 2 weeks from the point of when your official scores are available to the point when they arrive at the admissions office of the program that you've chosen. And if you want to send the additional score reports, as I mentioned, you can select order additional score reports through your My GRE account. So this is what it would look like in your particular account. You're going to have a list of all the test dates, and you can simply just check off which scores you want to send to a school. If you want to send all of them, you can do that, as I mentioned. If you want to just send 1 or 2, you can. If you want to send your most recent, you can do that. So we try to make it as flexible as possible for you. Now with the Score Select, a number of test takers, they understand the benefits here, and a lot of them do decide to take the test again. So we actually conducted a recent analysis, and most people that took the test the second time actually did better, which is a great thing. So we want to give you that confidence in coming to test day, knowing that if you don't do as well as you wanted to, you don't necessarily have to report those scores. So it gives you the power of confidence coming to the testing center and knowing that you're only going to report scores that reflect your personal best. So in terms of taking the test again, we do have a repeater policy. Now, we allow you to take the test once every 21 days, but no more than 5 times in any 12-month rolling period. All right, test prep. We have a number of test prep tools available to you. A lot of very, very high-quality test prep tools. Now, keep in mind, we create test prep to help level the playing field, to help give you the confidence to succeed, to give you really high-quality tools to help you prepare for that test. Now, one that I always discuss with students is my go-to prep material that we have available is something called Power Prep 2. And this is a software download right off our website, and it gives you a very in-depth look at the test, a lot of tips and strategies, closer look at the sections, things like that. But most importantly, it gives you 2 free full-length practice tests with scores at the end, too. So go out to the website, download this, check out the tips and strategies and things like that. And this is actually where you can access the prompts for the analytical writing section. You can also access the scoring rubrics or the information that the raters use to score your responses. So go out, take a look at that. This is where you're going to be able to experience the test. This is the closest you're going to get to the real test. So you can experience the new functionalities available, going back and forth within the sections, using the calculator wisely. So definitely do that. And best of all, you get scores at the end. So it really gives you an idea of how you may perform. In the analytical writing, we don't give you scores because that's scored by people, but it's still a practice section, so I definitely recommend it from that perspective. In addition to that, other free tool, and I'm sorry, the Power Prep is free. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's a free tool available to you, very high quality, so definitely check it out. Other free tools we have available is a math review document. Now, if you're someone that's maybe struggles a little bit from a quantitative perspective, this is a great document to help you prepare for the quantitative section. It's a 100-page PDF document that you can download right off our website, print it if you'd like, but it gives you a very comprehensive look at the quantitative section with a lot of questions, commentary on the answers to the questions, examples, sets of exercises, lots of things like that. So it's a great refresher from a quantitative perspective, and it's a great preparation document for the actual test. In addition, we also have something called the GRE Math Conventions document, and this just talks about mathematical notation, symbols, terminology, assumptions, and things that are being made within the test. So definitely take a look at that as well. Now, in addition to the free material we do have a few things available for purchase. We do have our GRE official guide, or official guide to the GRE Revised General Test, and this is a full test prep book, similar to other test prep books you may see out there. And it contains the Power Prep CD, so you get the CD in the back of the book, but it also contains 2 additional practice tests that are available in a paper version. So check that out. It's a great book. It can be purchased off of our website. It's also available in bookstores worldwide. And it gives you even more in-depth analysis and a closer look at the different sections, the question types, a lot of commentary, things like that. So in addition to that, we also have a specific book for our GRE verbal reasoning section as well as quantitative reasoning section. These are there's about 150 questions in the verbal reasoning section and the quantitative reasoning book. Totally new questions. They're not repeat questions from the official guide. They're brand new questions for these particular books. So take a look at that. If one of these is an area where you may struggle, for example, take a look at that because it'll really give you an even more in-depth look at the particular section. Some other things that we have available to you, we have GRE Success Starter videos. These are videos that you can watch. They're about 20-25 minutes long on our website. Just give you an introduction to the test. We have one for an overview for the verbal section as well as the quantitative section. We also have an app available to you out on the iTunes Store, and it's basically an extension of the GRE official guide. So you can do questions on the run if you're someone that's traveling constantly or are always using your phone. I know I'm always on my phone, so it's a nice resource to have or a nice app to have. You know, if you're just hanging out waiting for something, you can practice some GRE questions, things like that. We also have something called the Score It Now. This is an online tool that allows you to practice for the analytical writing section. And this will just give you prompts for the analytical writing section. You just give your responses, and you'll actually get instant score feedback. It is machine scored, so this is a lower stakes product. It's a prep tool, so we are able to use the machine scoring to score it. So it gives you an idea of how you may perform in this particular section. It gives you a lot of feedback, commentary, areas of improvement, things like that. So it's a really nice tool to help you prepare for the analytical writing section. Now, like probably every other company out there, we do have a Facebook page. This is where we go to engage mostly with our students, our test takers. We have well over 1 million students following this page, so there's always a lot of commentary, a lot of questions, comments from students that are posted to our page. So it gives you an opportunity to interact with others taking the test, seeing other perspectives, things like that. But we're always trying to stay engaged with you guys as well. So we'll post a lot of topics of, just to get some type of feedback from you. We'll post questions, obviously, little quizzes, things like that. We'll post videos, tips for success. And we try not just to focus on the test. We want to focus on the full process because you're going off to graduate school or business school. It's not just about the test. It's about the whole entire experience. So we want to help however we can to help make sure that you're prepared from a full perspective. So there's a lot of great stuff out there. So I encourage you to check out our page on Facebook, follow it, and follow our updates. So here's a quick look just to summarize everything that I've covered today. Talking about the features that we have. To question and second things that the test, the GRE one is full test, giving you options to pursue multiple degrees, which is always great. And most importantly, it gives you that power of confidence again with that source select option, giving the option to use which scores to do school, knowing that you're sending the scores the personal best. So we have a few additional tools I'll just mention quickly because I know we're running short on time here and I want to get to your questions. We do have GRE subject tests. Check with the department that you're applying to see if these are required as part of your admission or highly recommended. These are tests specific to a certain subject. You can see the subjects we have on the right-hand side here. These are ways to make your application stronger, but if a department is requiring it or highly recommending it, I also recommend that you definitely check these out to see if you need to take them. And this is a paper-based test. It's offered 3 times a year, so you want to make sure you plan ahead of time. And the test dates are April, October, and November. Last but not least, we have something called the GRE Research Service. So if you're someone that doesn't know what program that you want to attend or that you want to go to or pursue, I highly recommend opting into our GRE Research Service. It's free for you to opt in. So basically what this means is you're going to complete biographical questions about yourself, about what you're looking to do, things like that. And all this will be saved and it'll be put into a database. This database it's a database of GRE test takers just like yourself, and universities will use this database for recruiting purposes. So there's about 30 different criteria that universities will use to narrow down and find a certain type of applicant they may be looking for their program. So definitely recommend opting into this because it could make you consider programs that you've never even thought about before. So definitely check this out. It's just all you got to do is check something off on your GRE profile and all your information will be entered. It's really effortless. So definitely a win-win for you as well as the universities trying to, you matching the perfect program and the program finding the perfect applicant. So that's everything I had for you today. This is our QR code to sign up for our GRE Test Taker newsletter. So feel free to do that if you'd like. You can also sign up from the URL that's listed here. So now I'm going to jump into the Q&A. And I will answer as many questions as I possibly can. So I know we're running short on time here. First question, what are school-specific admissions requirements regarding the GRE test? Well, I get this question a lot, and the admission requirements are really going to vary based on the school. So I recommend checking with the school or program to which you're applying. Because we don't actually set the admissions deadlines. The schools are the ones that do that. Oh, this is a good question. Okay. I have a comprehensive book to study for the GRE, but it's a 2008 edition. Is the test different now? Yes, the test is different now. The test changed in 2011. So if your book is from 2008, chances are it is based on the previous version of the GRE, so I would definitely get a new book. But if your book says GRE Revised General Test, that is the new test. However, I highly doubt, I wasn't in this position in 2008, but I don't believe they were creating prep materials for the revised test back in 2008. I think prep materials for the revised general test, which is the new GRE, first were published in, I want to say, 2010. So it's a very, very likely chance that that book is outdated, so I definitely recommend getting a new book. Okay. Reading comprehension questions seem to be difficult. What are the ways to handle these questions? How do I strengthen my vocabulary? So I'm going to kind of answer these questions together because preparing for the reading comprehension and vocabulary are going to be, it's a similar approach that I recommend. So when preparing for this section, just keep in mind that the level of reading, the level of text is going to be typical to what you're going to face as a senior in college, so focus on that level of text. Now in terms of vocabulary, I don't recommend just going through a bunch of words and trying to figure out definitions, because the new GRE is going to focus on questions within context. So the best thing to do is just keep on reading challenging text. That will expose you to more challenging vocabulary. Okay. Online courses or materials to prepare for the GRE. I think I covered most of this. We do not have any online courses, but we do have the number of prep materials that I went over. Definitely recommend the Power Prep. I guess you can call that an online tool, because it is a download right off of our website, so definitely check that out. Can you be a tutor of the GRE for me? Well, I would love to, but we don't offer any tutoring services for GRE. We just have the prep materials that are available on the website. So I do apologize, although I'd love to help you out as best I can. Next question. If I decide to not send scores at the testing center, do I have to pay for sending the scores later? Yes, there is a charge to send the scores after you leave the testing center. So that's why I always recommend students come to the testing center with up to an idea of up to 4 schools they want to report their scores to. So those first 4 are free. Anything after that 4, there's a charge of $27 per report sent. Sorry, this is a long question here. I'm just trying to summarize it. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I registered for the GRE test and we'll take a minute. Deadlines for applications were between December and the beginning of February. Do you know if scores can still be added to applications? Well, this is really going to depend on the school, so I would recommend checking with the school that you're applying to. Sometimes schools will have plans in place where they can accept scores at the last minute, but it really just depends on the schools to which you're applying. So definitely check with the admissions officers there. A couple of people are asking for copies of these slides, and yes, I can send those to you. So I'm just trying to save the emails here. Okay. And I do believe College Week Live will have the presentation up for a little while. I'm not 100% sure, but don't quote me on that. Definitely check with them first. But I believe they do, but again, I'm not 100% sure. So I don't want to promise anything here. The cost to take the GRE Revised General Test is $195. I think that's everyone's question. Any other questions? I'll give you another minute or 2 to submit any. And for those who are asking for it and provided their emails, I'm saving them now to send you copies of the presentation. No, I cannot hear you, so please type your question into the Q&A box. How much time do you think is necessary for preparing for the GRE? Well, as I mentioned in the presentation, it's really going to vary based on who you are as a student and your study habits. But most students prepare anywhere from 1 to 3 months for the test. So kind of use that as the starting point. If you need more time, there are definitely students that need more time. Some students even need less. But definitely look for like a rough idea of 1 to 3 months to start, and just kind of go from there. Okay. All right, well, I think that's going to conclude our session. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this presentation was helpful to you and it gave you a lot of great information about the GRE, how to prepare and things like that, and a good overview of the test. And again, I want to thank College Week Live very, very much for the opportunity to be here today to speak with you. So again, best of luck to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us.